How has biblical interpretation on sexuality evolved in LGBTQ plus history? Imagine a time when the Bible was seen as a strict rule book, leaving little room for different understandings of sexuality. Over the years, how people interpret these texts has changed a lot, especially in Christian communities. In the early days, most Christians believed that sex was only acceptable between a man and a woman within marriage. They often pointed to passages like Leviticus 18:22, Romans 1, and 1 Corinthians 6 to support this view. These scriptures were understood as condemning same-sex relationships and transgender identities, reflecting the cultural norms of those times. But as history moved forward, scholars and believers started to look at these texts differently. They realized that the cultural context of biblical times was very different from today. The words used in ancient texts don't always match modern ideas of sexual orientation or gender identity. Some argue that early Christian attitudes weren't always as condemning as once thought, and that the biblical texts should be read with an understanding of their original setting. From the late 20th century onward, a shift began. Many Christian groups started re-examining Scripture with more attention to history and language. They argued that some biblical prohibitions were based on cultural norms that no longer apply today. These groups focus on themes like love, faithfulness, and justice, suggesting that committed same-sex relationships can reflect these values just as heterosexual marriages do. This has led to a more accepting view within some parts of the church, especially as the LGBTQ plus community gained visibility and rights. At the same time, some Christian groups hold to traditional interpretations. They believe that biblical laws about sexuality are still valid and that sexual activity should only happen within heterosexual marriage. They see this as part of God's created order, based on what is written in Genesis and reaffirmed by Jesus in the New Testament. The conversation about biblical authority has also changed. Some affirming Christians think that not all biblical laws are meant to be followed literally today. They believe that cultural context matters and that Christians can discern which parts of Scripture are timeless and which are specific to ancient times. This approach allows for a more flexible understanding of Scripture, especially as our knowledge of human sexuality grows. Because of these shifts, many churches now welcome LGBTQ plus individuals fully. Some have created new ways to interpret Scripture that affirm same-sex relationships and gender identities. Pastors and theologians work to support LGBTQ plus Christians in living out their faith without feeling condemned. The debate continues, but what's clear is that biblical interpretation on sexuality is no longer fixed. It's a conversation that keeps evolving, balancing tradition with the need to respect and include all people.